There's nothing you can possibly do to become more deadly than to improve your facility with language. And the way you do that is by reading, especially great things, and by writing, and by thinking, and by speaking, for that matter. But how could that not be viewed as absolutely central to what education is about? You want to be inarticulate and stumble over everything that you try to think and communicate?
Yeah.
How are you going to get anywhere? You don't even know who you are under those circumstances. This massive feeling that's expressing itself, maybe in violence because you can't find the words. And you stumble around and bump into things, and you're clunky and dull, and you're not witty. You don't sparkle. So let's say you take the example of a SEAL who's got it all, but this literacy. What happens to him compared to someone who has all those skills? I've been successful because I've been a conduit of good ideas, and I have the ability to synthesize a lot of information and to communicate that to people in a way that's understandable. The person who made that comment, they were struggling for one reason or another, and one of the things you do with people who are struggling is you make the simple even simpler, because then they can get a toehold. Like if they're really barely able to move. I had one client, he had a hard life, man. He was like 85. He'd fallen off a ladder and broken his neck, and they had permanently fused it, so he was basically like this. He could hardly move. He was so depressed. He literally couldn't get out of bed. It was awful. And he was in chronic pain because of his broken neck. And so, the first thing I did with him was get him to sit up for like 30 seconds. That was it. That's where he had to start, And after, I worked with him when he was in the hospital. After 2 weeks, he was walking down the hall and able to sit up and read for, 5 or 6 minutes. And he got out of the hospital. He went home. But he had to start with the simplest possible steps. And hey, man, this is the definition of humility in some ways, is that you start progressing where you can start. You only have to ask a stupid question once. You ask a stupid question, and if you're in a crowd and you ask a stupid question, 80% of the people in the crowd have the same question. They're just too cowardly to ask. But you ask and then someone actually tells you, you never have to ask that question again. You're no longer stupid. What stupid thing am I doing that I could quit doing? That I would quit doing? Because those aren't the same thing, right? Because there's stupid things that you're doing that you're just not going to quit doing because you like them. But there might be something on the edge there where you could stop that. If you want to know something about yourself, sit on your bed one night and say to yourself, you got to mean this, you got to be desperate. This is no game, this. My life is not everything I want it to be, and perhaps it's not everything that I need it to be. And by need, I mean my life is so unbearable that the suffering that's attendant upon that is make me nihilistic, cynical, bitter, resentful, driving the proclivity to see evil everywhere except within my own heart. These are problems, man. And you ask yourself, you sit on the bed and say, okay, man, I'm ready to learn something. What's one thing I'm doing wrong that I know I'm doing wrong, that I could fix, that I would fix? It's like, you meditate on that, you'll get an answer. And it won't be one you want, but it'll be the necessary one, and it's often something that will point you to small things. That works. You start making those micro improvements, real micro improvements, real on the ground, actual micro improvements to things that are wrong, you'll improve unbelievably rapidly.
That's once again going back to the roots, going back to who I am, how I became who I am today. And it comes back from hard work. It comes back from having that very minimalistic mindset. And when you're out there, man, and you're 43, and I've accomplished a lot of shit, you're out there with some 20-year-old kids, and you're nobody again. Being nobody, there's a lot of power in being nobody. There's a lot of power from going to scratch again and going back out there, picking up a Pulaski and just digging fire line. You're just another guy on the line, digging a fire line. And there's no text message. There's no, my God, David, can you sign my book? No, motherfucker, get your ass out there. I didn't want to sit back and, just enjoy my retirement from the military there's no growth in that. So I decided to go out and do this. So
is if you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And you talked about your mom having it. The mnemonic that we'll talk about is called Bright Minds. And the G in Bright Minds is genetics, but we don't think about it properly. Oh, well, I'm overweight because my family's overweight, or I have hypertension because it runs in my family, or I have diabetes because it runs in my family, or I have Alzheimer's disease, or I'm vulnerable to it and there's nothing I can do about it. And that's a lie. Genes increase your vulnerability and they teach you what you should be doing. So, for example, I have 6 children, 3 of them are adopted. 2 of my nieces we adopted because their parents couldn't stop with drugs and alcohol, and it was a disaster for these kids. And I tell my nieces, if you never drink or do drugs, you're never going to have a problem. But if you do, it could be serious. You need to be on an alcohol drug prevention program every day of your life. I have obesity and heart disease in my family. I'm going to be 70 this year. I'm not overweight and I don't have heart disease because I'm on an obesity heart disease prevention program every day of my life. So if you have it in your family, as soon as you know, you should be serious about preventing these 11 major risk factors.